self-described heterosexual. And you'll see that by age 65, something in the order of 80% of them continue to live. If the homosexual population was, as I described it, something less than 3%, this is the percentage of them that are still alive, something less than 40%. These are people who self-describe as homosexual. So the activity has very clear public health implications, which I laid out to you in detail. And that detail must be drawn across lines, because there are a number of things individuals can do which don't speak to the real activity. For example, let's take something you all know about, and many of you probably are very much against: cigarette smoking. Does everybody who smokes cigarettes die of a pulmonary disease? The answer is no. In fact, we estimate that cigarette smoking takes about 8 years off your life. According to this epidemiological study, participating in homosexual sex as a male takes about 20 years off your life. Does this mean that every homosexual is going to die early? No, it doesn't. But it does mean that it has very serious public health implications. And lastly, I want to say that we can do a number of things which we can get away with for a while. But you have to remember, life is a lot more like a snapshot, a lot more like a video, rather, than a snapshot. You can look at it in a moment in time and think there are no consequences. But as time goes on, things start to change. And I can look very easily at Black America. In Black America, we decided that welfare was a good thing. Black America survived slavery. Do you know that? Do you have any idea how destructive American slavery was? The most destructive form of slavery known to mankind. You know what happened? The black family survived. They thrived, they survived, they lived on. We lived through Reconstruction. We even lived through Jim Crow and apartheid. The black family started to disintegrate in the mid-1960s when we thought that replacing daddy with Uncle Sam was a good thing. And then men started disappearing from their families. And at this point in time, 70% of black kids are born to parents that are unmarried. The point being that welfare looks like a good idea as it was practiced then. And in a moment in time, it looked good because an individual woman got a check that supported her in a way that she wasn't being supported by the government before. But over time, it's proven to be destructive.
Is, I have some quotes from a few medical and psychiatric associations here, and I'd like everyone to hear them, and I'd like the second speaker, I'm sorry, I'm really bad with names, to
Dr. Diggs.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry. And that's, in 1990, the American Psychological Association stated that scientific evidence does not show that conversion therapy works and that it can do more harm than good. In 1998, the American Psychiatric Association said, and this is a direct quote, psychiatric literature strongly demonstrates that treatment attempts to change sexual orientation are ineffective. However, the potential risks are great, including depression, anxiety, and self-destructive behavior. The American Medical Association said most of the emotional disturbance experienced by gay men and lesbians around their sexual identity is not based on psychological causes, but rather is due to a sense of alienation and an unaccepting environment. For this reason, aversion therapy is no longer recommended for gay men and lesbians. So I'd like to know sort of what data you're coming from if it's not from these associations. I'd also like to know, when I was born, I received blood transfusions from a blood bank that hadn't been tested. And I was lucky, I didn't get AIDS. However, I firmly believe that people need to give blood regardless of who they are, because that's what saved my life. And nowadays, the blood banks do screen blood from anyone. At this point, you can't give blood if you're a gay man, if you've had sex with a gay man since 1973. I believe the year is, or if you are a woman who's had sex with a gay man since 1973. But this neglects the fact that the AIDS rate is rising fastest in African American heterosexual women.
Why don't let Dr. Diggs respond to that? I think.
I just wonder how he feels about the fact that they now test blood that goes into blood banks, and why should homosexual men no longer still be unable to donate blood?
You want to talk about that as well, Brian?
Well,
Has she been here the whole time?
I answered all your questions except for the blood transfusion question already. I will briefly restate them, and that is that the APA, both APAs and the AMA, took their positions because they were intimidated by raw political chutzpah, not because of any data. I think when you look to the source of the articles you mentioned, most of them are going to be found in editorials and not based on any new scientific discoveries at all. I can assure you this. I can also write on the board, I'll do this when one of the other speakers is speaking, there's this website that can describe this to you in excruciating detail. Furthermore, the idea that somehow the therapy was harmful has never been proven. The issue of the increased rates of depression and anxiety somehow being related to conversion therapy rather than the homosexual activity or some other underlying cause itself has not been supported by the data. I gave you the most recent article. If you look up this article, and you'll see that a statement pertaining to this, you can go to the original article. You don't have to believe me. So I answered all those questions before, and I just gave you a brief rejoinder. In regards to the issue of blood screening, I agree, but part of the problem we have is that because of our reaction to AIDS as a political problem rather than a public health problem, we have not done some of the very good public health interventions we could do. The change in the demographic of HIV in America is a very good point you make. The problem with the blood screening is that it's not perfect. You can still transmit HIV despite the blood screening. So that's why they continue to ask those questions and they continue to be relevant. I think that covers most of your, but just off to the side a little bit, the comment you made. If you're a woman that's had sex with a gay man, you speak directly to the whole problem when I was telling you about definitions. How is it that a gay man is having sex with a woman?
Bisexuality.
But they don't call themselves bisexual, man. And if it's, well, you can, McGreevy did not call himself. First of all, I'm not getting into debate in this back and forth in the audience. You know, if you want to have your own forum, sir, you can do that. But the point is that McGreevy did not call himself a bisexual. He said, I am a gay American.
Would any, Brian or Jim, would like to comment on that one too, or no?
Actually, this is, I apologize, I shouldn't have just blurted out a comment in the audience. We have some order here. For the two gentlemen on either side of Dr. Dix, I honestly can't disagree with you because you have a matter of opinion. But my background is in clinical science. I'm a PhD student in bioengineering. My specialty happens to be in genetics and neuroscience. So I can disagree with Dr. Dix on a scientific level. If you put up that chart, I think what you're talking about is a paper from Hogg et al., the 1997 International Journal of Epidemiology paper. The problem with that paper is you're talking about data taken from Vancouver in 1987 to 1992, which is at the height of the HIV crisis in Canada. So you're basically taking biased data. And how they extrapolated those numbers was they took the number of AIDS deaths, they multiplied by 0.95, and they said that's the number of dead gay men. So that's not how we don't linearly interpolate population growth or extrapolate in that case. That doesn't work. That's not sound data. That's not sound scientific practice. Now, as to the gauging, there are two key papers that have come out on genetics and homosexuality. There's one in Science. That was the 1990.
Do you have a specific question, though?
Yes, I do.
I'll take questions, not statements.
I'm getting there.
All right.
There are two papers. There's the 1993 Science paper. That was the one in Science that suggested that there was a statistical link between the X chromosome. We don't talk about bar buddies these days. There's a lot that's happened since 1983 when you graduated from medical school. PCR, the Human Genome Project, there are 33,000 genes. Only a quarter of them have been annotated, and that's as of the last week. The paper that I recently published with HMS was detailing a gene that's been looked at 3 different times, and we just found the 50th different mutation in this one gene for heart disease. You can find so much information in biology that there's no hope. So I'm wondering, you're speaking somewhat ex cathedra on the issue of public health and bioinformatics and genetics, but yet there is so much data to be had that you cannot yet state the fact that homosexuals are not one way or other. You can't state that it's not a choice. You can't state that it's a public health issue because even still, like, the girl over there said.
What exactly is your question? We're not going to have time for
My question is, where the hell are you coming from? What do you mean? Where do you get off saying this? Where is the data that you
Brian,
have?
you want to try that?
Okay. I'm not speaking as a medical professional. I'll leave that to Dr. Diggs. But I think just from the person hearing what you're saying about, the gay gene, I mean, you just have to look around you. I mean, is there also a bisexual gene, or is there a transgender gene, or is there a spanking gene, or a urination gene, or what about prisons? I mean, is there a gene that these guys have while they're in prison and then they don't have when they come out? I mean, I think that one just has to look around and see how hard the gay activists in the medical profession is trying to make this point that's on its surface completely ridiculous. I'll let Dr. Diggs take this from a medical standpoint.
Human behavior is complex, and a lot of times there's an effort to attribute something to genetics. The fact remains that no one has been able to say that there is a gay gene. The information you mentioned about the Human Genome Project, I'm not intimately familiar with, and I'll leave that up to your expertise, in the sense that you know the data. I, however, cannot leave your conclusions up to your expertise. In regards to the study, yes, you're correct, that is the source of my data. The study, however, is sound. It did make certain assumptions, which all data does, make certain assumptions. The bottom line problem is not simply related to the rates of HIV, but as you might notice, if you remember the study, remember that chart, actually it shows that the rate of life loss is lower if there are actually more people than what has been shown who are practicing homosexuals. In other words, I showed you, compared the upper black line, heterosexuals, to the lower black line of 3% people practicing homosexuality. This upper line is actually if there were 9%, which there are probably not. This does not mean the data is biased. What it means is that the data